Hi, Carlos. Thanks for agreeing to do our second review of Continental 3 Poker Club tournament hands. These are taken from April 29th and also, I think, May 1st. So 7 hands from the first tournament and 3 from the last one, but it should be okay. This is going to be our first hand. In this hand, we are going to see a raise to 99 from Pigeon. Destructo is going to cold call in middle position. What was an under the gun +1? Berck is going to call, and 6 calls to complete. Let's pause here for a second, even before the flop. Anything to say about this? 4 to the flop. I guess the raise amount was 99, so more than 3 bigs, 3.3 bigs.
Everybody's pretty deep, so I'm not surprised to see it. I do know, so I've been studying more GTO lately.
Yeah.
And I do know you don't see a ton of multi-way pots like this.
Right.
So there's a very good chance one of the 2 players who called before the button probably should have 3-bet or folded. That's a very good possibility,
Yeah.
but
Well, we'll see.
Unless they know something about Pigeon.
I mean, my reads on him are pretty solid. I wouldn't expect him to be opening, 10-9 offsuit or, even pocket 2s. I don't know that he would open those from under the gun +1. So I don't think there's anything about his range. I mean, you could argue maybe if you think he's super strong, then you can set mine or go for a suited connector type thing. He's going to lead into 3 opponents on a queen high board, 2 colors. Kind of connected and dynamic. Let's let it roll on the flop. He's going to get 2 calls. Destructo and Dave Berck. Now, I think I'm not going to reveal hands till the end, so we're still playing this completely blind. But bet sizing, what would you have in your range to bet into 3 opponents as Pigeon for that sizing? Which was about
probably going to be strong.
Just one other note is his bet was 255 into a pot of about 400, so it's a little more than half pot, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, so out of position to 2 people in a 4-way pot. He shouldn't be doing a lot of betting here, so the hands he wants are the ones that can polarize quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So good value, like I would say top pair, top kicker better. I would even be cautious with king, queen, just because it should be hard to get value from worse with the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say top pair, top kicker or better. And like king, jack, obviously, or like the ace of diamonds. I will want some combination of those things in my range to lead into the pot here.
Okay, so should be reasonably strong. And now it's Destructo and Dave Berck. I mean, there's so many draws available here. But if you're one of the callers, what's the worst hand you're calling with?
That's a good question. I would say maybe queen, jack. Jack 10, I think. You could probably call jack 10, but that would probably be the worst I would call here as far as pairs. And if I have a draw, if it's a good draw, I'm going to raise it, like the nut flush draw. Mm-hmm. But if it's a weaker flush draw, that's something they can call with. And also, I don't quite know what we should do with king jack. It probably matters if we have the king of diamonds or not.
Yeah.
But that could probably go into a calling range or raising range. Mm-hmm. You start looking at draws like jack 9, those tend to become like the bottom of the calling range here if you even want to continue with those in a theoretical sense. So that's going to be all they should have in their ranges. And honestly, one of them probably should have. We already discussed that there's a good chance they should have three bet pre, and there's also a good chance they should have raised with whatever they were willing to call with on the flop if they have the stronger stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, so on this turn, which brings in King Jack, and I mean, for what it's worth, 10-9, Queen 9, pocket 9s. I don't expect pocket 9s to be around on this turn usually. But
what was the bet size on the turn?
877 into a pot of 1176. So it's like 75% pot, I think. Might be 2/3.
Yeah.
It's a big bet, and he gets called twice.
Yeah, he's using good bet sizing if he has the correct polarized range to be doing so. So I like what I'm seeing from Pigeon so far, unless he has like pocket jacks or something. And and the two callers, is kind of, there's a very good chance at least one of them is making a mistake. Now, once we get another double call on the turn with that big bet.
River is the 4 of diamonds, which brings in the front door flush. Nothing else. I mean, I don't know how many other straight draws. I guess a bear jack could be a straight draw here. Obviously, it doesn't get there. Pigeon now checks. Destructo is going to check, and Berck is going to put in 1900 bet, which is cool sizing to me because I think it's exactly half pot.
I think he should probably be jamming a lot here. Really, as far as value hands here, he really should only have a flush. And I think that's probably strong enough to make a bigger bet. As far as bluffs here, I guess just the ace of diamonds.
How do you get here with just the ace of diamonds? Ace of diamonds, queen of spades, maybe? You know, an offsuit queen.
Ace jack with the ace of diamonds. Ace 10 with the ace of diamonds.
Which became open-ended on the turn. So if you get here with the ace of diamonds and a jack, or a queen, maybe. Although, if he has ace queen, he could bet for value, I guess, maybe.
Yes, and I would say that one maybe should have raised by now, but if he got to the river in this fashion with ace queen, see that's kind of goes to what I was saying earlier, is like, if people are playing well, then they should have very high standards for calling in multi-way pots.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard for one pair to get much value on this run out.
Yeah.
So maybe ace queen can bet, but definitely not like king queen.
Yeah. All right, but this is always one of the hardest questions for me, and I think a lot of other Rex is what am I bluffing with? So if I'm Berck and I somehow called flop and turn, which should put me on good value hands or else some draws, the obvious draw gets there. The only thing I'm left to bluff with is a straight draw that bricked, I guess. Or unless he can't be there with ace 10 and the ace of diamonds. Like ace 10 and the ace of diamonds shouldn't be here. Right? So he's
ace jack with jack offsuit with the ace of diamonds would probably be like the best bluffing hand.
And that's only 3 hands. So I'm not going to belabor this too much, but I think illustrates how difficult it is to find bluffs in this spot. He just doesn't have it.
But that's okay when that's okay when you're in a spot where you shouldn't have very many value bets either.
Well,
it's just when people
he can easily have 20 flushes. 20 flush combinations. He could have more. But ace X alone is 9.
Those should have raised by now. I'm discounting those because they should have raised by now.
All right. Well, do you want results? Because they both fold to this bet. To a half pot bet, which is interesting. He's going to get fold. Which tells you, I think, something about maybe... I don't know about Destructo, but for Pigeon to fold here, especially after Destructo checked, he just has to believe Berck. He can't think he's bluffing very much. Because what he has...
Yeah, I think so. This strikes me as an underbluff spot by most people.
Yeah, I agree.
So I kind of like Pigeon's fold.
Pigeon had queen jack offsuit with no diamond. And it turned out that Berck did have the nut flush.
Gotcha.
So
So
Berck did not. He never raised his. Now, I don't think it's so terrible because Pigeon opened from under the gun +1 and can have aces, kings, queens, ace, queen. I don't know about king, queen, which he's probably not going to fold to a raise.
yeah, but it's a 4-way pot, and you do want to deny some equity to the other players.
Yeah.
And also, you have so much equity that it's okay if you get called by a strong range. When you raise the flop there.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
what was his kicker?
5.
Dave's.
Berck had ace
so
5.
He does have some
ace 5 suited.
Gotcha. So on the flop, he does have like some wheel cards he can hit to improve his equity also. So yeah, that's a pretty good hand. And the key thing about having the 5 is that it hurts his showdown value in a game where people are likely continuing with hands like ace jack.
Yep.
And so it's more important to raise that hand on the flop in this sort of game than not.
Yeah, because his ace, he's not going to have showdown value 4 ways with an ace high.
Right.
I don't know if he's ever beating Pigeon, though. If they're going to get to the river with ace high, he's probably never winning anyway.
Right, which is why he should start turning his hand to a bluff immediately on the flop, I think.
Cool.
Because then you get a lot of those better ace highs to fold. So Pigeon's obviously opening too wide. Queen jack off is not open from that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And what about Destructo?
Destructo had ace jack off, which turned into open ender on the turn.
No diamond.
No diamond.
Yeah, I'm assuming no jack.
Even
with the jack of diamond. Yeah, so we call the flop with a gutter. Yeah, I think I would go ahead and fold the flop with that hand in a multi-way pot like this.
Great. All right, let's keep going. This next hand is, let's see, it's going to be on the right-hand side there where you see, we're going to have...
Yes, I see it.
Fan favorite EvilWillie raises to 120 under the gun. A couple folds. Steve Albini, who's known for his aggressive play, is going to call on the button, and Berck calls as well. Pause for 1 sec. Now, we're going to play this hand as Albini. He had, and it's going to get shown down anyway, but he had 8 of diamonds, 7 of diamonds. So I think a fine, I mean, what are we, 6-handed? It seems like a fine call from the button.
Yes.
Let's Berck in, but I mean, I don't know. He's unlikely to need to 3-bet that. Anyway, so the flop comes out ace 7, 3, 2 clubs, giving Albini middle pair. Mediocre kicker. And on the flop, we're going to see 2 checks to Albini, who's going to bet 111 into a pot of 380. So actually just about 1/3 pot, I guess, a little less actually.
Yeah, this looks really good. You
like the sizing?
Yes. And one thing that I've learned since the last time we did one of these, I talked a little bit with our mutual friend, Andrew Brokus.
Mm-hmm.
So from GTO, I've been learning that your betting range wants to be very polarized in multi-way pots. But Andrew says you can still bet your... Actually, maybe this won't apply here. He said you can still bet your strong but vulnerable hands.
Mm-hmm.
So in this spot, it would be something like an ace 5, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I guess even that's not too vulnerable on this board. I guess if we were looking at like a 10 high board and you had something like Jack 10, maybe that's something you can bet just for the protection value you get in multi-way pots. So I was going to misapply that here because although the 7 is vulnerable, it's not strong and vulnerable. It's kind of like marginal and vulnerable. So this will for sure be a great bet and a great bet size in a heads up pot. Mm-hmm. I'm just unsure about multi-way pots because those are the part of poker that solvers don't handle as well.
Yep. Well, we may see a deviation from the solver, or maybe not. That's the question. So EvilWillie goes all in for 5,133 chips, which
Yeah, I'd say this is a
pot would be
deviation.
3-6. This would be, I think, a pot size raise, a check raise if he wants to make it pot size would be about 700.
713.
Yeah, so he's going 7 times pot, I think.
Yeah, pretty big. So unless Steve Albini knows something about EvilWillie, I imagine he should be folding almost everything here.
Steve, I don't know if we can hear it. I'll try to goose the volume. I don't know if we'll hear him say something, but he did apply a read, I think.
Okay.
Let me see if it works. It's hard to hear. Well, he's going to think about it for a while. And I think what he was saying was he's seen EvilWillie make really big bets on flops before. And I think he thinks that he's doing that mainly with draws, because otherwise how can he call?
I agree.
Now,
I agree
it turns
that
out
his range...
Even if we know
I
that,
agree
though,
that his range looks a lot like a draw,
yeah,
but 8-7 is not in great shape against the draws he would do this with.
100%, because this draw has 15 outs, right? And he's also got a backdoor straight draw, so it's more like 16.
It's probably a hit. Yeah,
it definitely a head. So he's calling behind, and if we knew his equity, let's say it was like 45% with his 8-7. I don't know if that's exactly right, but it's probably not too far off. I don't think because the bet is so huge, I'm not sure that the odds are correct to call here. But there's also kind of like the tilt equity or just the brag equity of being correct in the call and fading all those outs. So.
Correct. But here's the thing, though. We're correct in that we're correct and we have 45% equity to his 55.
Yeah.
So even though we have the pair, we're behind. And so we correctly deduced that we're behind and we call. That's not what we want to do.
I mean, it depends on the pot odds, but he had bet 111 into 380 and was facing a bet of 5,100. So I haven't done the math on what pot odds he needs, but
it's probably going to be close to 50%.
Yeah.
It's going to be fairly high on that.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just, I mean, there was a lot of yelling and hooting on the result of this hands, because it's one of those hands. I don't recall seeing this in live poker, maybe ever. I don't. In live poker, I just don't recall seeing people make bets like that, let alone call them. Maybe it happens.
No, I don't see it much in live poker, even though I don't play a ton of live poker. Yeah. But when I did, I didn't see it much. But I do see it a lot online, and it's pretty much exactly this type of hand every time.
Really? Well, but so it'd be different if we have an ace. Because with an ace...
Yes, if we have an ace...
Then he's only got 9 outs, maybe 10 with the backdoor straight draw, and we're in comfortable shape. Fun hand. All right, the third one is going to be on the right-hand side, hand 18, with special guest Maria, who's an excellent poker player. And TaxMan's going to limp. You may recall from last video that he's a fan of limping. Maria puts in a 4x raise, and Jam calls, which is interesting, by the way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but he's cold calling from the big blind, and it's a 4x bet with one limper. He should be pretty solid here, I would think. You know, he should have a pretty strong range.
Right.
All right, and we get a flop that's pretty darn dynamic. It's going to go check, check.
And he's in the big blind. Yeah. So in this spot, this is more of a normal type of hand I'm used to, seeing lately. Is heads up to the flop. And so dynamic flop shouldn't be betting as much opening from the cutoff, because we have sort of a wide range. This is like a wide range versus wide range situation. Mm-hmm. So, she could be checking back with a lot of hands here for sure.
All right, and then another jack on the turn, which makes it even less likely than before that anyone has one, although it's not impossible.
Right.
And now, this is cool. Jam's going to lead out for a very small bet. Let's say it's a third pot. Might be a third pot, actually. He's going to bet 158, and Maria's going to call.
Yeah. I think I've learned when the pre-flop aggressor doesn't bet, the big blind has leeway to lead a lot, but they generally choose a big sizing. Now there could be some exploitive reasons to choose a small sizing, but I think theoretically that size should be bigger on the turn. Because here's the thing with dynamic boards. There's a very good chance that both players have a piece of it. So the small bet really doesn't accomplish much.
Doesn't deny any equity, doesn't put the opponent to a tough decision, etc.
Exactly. That's what you want to do. You want to put people to tough decisions. And you can do that with small bets on dry boards. But on dynamic boards like this one, the small bets aren't going to do that.
This is another example of a hand where if I'm in jam shoes, I am really unsure what I should lead with and what I should check raise with. I mean,
you said lead or check raise?
I mean, this card, it seems really unlikely that she's going to bet if check to, which pushes me towards leading with what I want to lead with. Because if she didn't bet, how many jacks does she really have when she checks back the flop? So when the second jack comes, I'm not really expecting her to go ahead and bet it. She could. But if I'm check raising, I'd be so worried that I'd have another check behind, especially on a board like this, where any 9 or 10 is a gut shot. And you know what I mean? Like, I got to get value now, but I think that also fits with your theory that jam should be betting higher.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. I will be leading here way more likely than way more often than check raising, because I don't think she bets these cards very often.
So here comes a 9, not a heart, so the front door flush draw doesn't get there. Jam is going to check, and Maria's going to bet, I think, 60% pot-ish. I think it doesn't take him too long to do it.
Yeah, this is interesting. Ranges are still fairly wide here. Yeah, this could be anything. Could be like a small pair that's trying to like bluff him off of a 7 or 8 now. Ace high makes sense for that also. But a lot of 10s in her range as well, I think.
Well, we're going to see, and so Maria bets 450, and Jam just immediately calls. It doesn't look like he thought very much about raising or folding. He just called. So, we're going to see hands.
Jam feels like 2-pair.
What?
Feels like Jam has 2-pair here.
Like a 9 or an 8 or 7?
Right.
All right. So here are the hands. I think they get shown down. Okay. So a couple things surprised me here, or at least I had questions about them. One is Jam rivered his straight and decides to check call it. And for not a particularly big bet sizing by Maria either, she bet 60% pot. So it's not like she bet 1.5x pot and he just flatted. He's got a pretty good hand.
Right.
I'm surprised he didn't lead it or check raise it.
Yeah, I'm very surprised they didn't lead the river or, like you said, check raise it. I guess they're just afraid of the boat, but how likely is she really to have a boat here? The thing is, she's opening from the cutoff, so her range should be very wide here. So this strikes me as a little bit of monsters under the bed syndrome.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, and it turned out, I mean, he got value here from a hand that obviously is never calling if he leads. I don't know. So the question is Ace of Hearts, Queen of Diamonds, is that a good bluffing hand on the river?
Is that a good bluffing hand on the river? So
let me throw out an
observation. Was there a bet?
Her Ace of Hearts blocks half of the flush draws that missed.
Was there a bet post flop? I can't remember now.
All right, so
before the river,
flop goes check check, turn goes Jam leads for like 1/3 pot. Maria calls, and on the river Jam checks and she goes ahead and bets. She bluffs. it has to be a bluff. I can't believe she's betting for value with ace high here. So she
Right.
goes ahead and bluffs. And one of my confusions was the ace of hearts is not a hand I don't want that in my hand when I'm bluffing here, because I was hoping he'd have like ace three of hearts, which he'll fold. So I have like, maybe if I have king, queen, no hearts, might be a better hand to bluff with. I'm hoping to block some kind of 10, like a king 10, queen 10, which is a straight. So maybe I'm too obsessed with the blocker, or the whatever the opposite of a blocker is. Ace of hearts is not a good card for us here. So I was trying to figure out why did she bluff this. It also, if she checks back, she does beat. She has some value.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking when I asked what was the post-flop action.
Right.
Because if the turn had gone check, then for sure this hand is going to be best a lot. That changes a little bit when jam leads to turn. But yeah, I still don't know if I want to turn this into a bluff.
It's interesting. I mean, it can't be terrible to bluff it. I was just sort of, it's one of those questions I'm thinking about constantly, is which hands should I turn into bluffs? Probably because I don't bluff enough. So when I see a hand like this, I think, I don't think this is in top of my list for bluffing. But
and what's the river sizing?
It was 60% pot.
Gotcha. So yeah, if at this point, obviously, if we're bluffing with this hand, we're trying to bluff jam off of a pair. And if we want to convince him to fold a pair, we probably should use a bigger size than that. Otherwise, it's not worth using as a bluff, in my opinion.
If he just, I don't know why he would bet the turn. If he had 7-6, or if he had, 9-8, which is really just jacks and nines. So let's say he had 9-8.
Right.
We may get him off of that. I don't know. I guess he's gonna have. That's the question. What size gets him off a 9?
Right, and that's what you should be going for here. And I would not be surprised that that medium bet gets called by a 9 in this game.
I love this hand. I just think it's fascinating.
Agreed.
On to hand 4, which is going to be on the right hand side there. Again, same table.
Josh, have a drink, mate. Take the edge off. Yeah.
We're going to have a limp fest. Deacon Blues limps. Leave Albini limps behind. Jam folds. Berck calls. EvilWillie folds. TaxMan now raises to 120. This is delightful.
I made a little spreadsheet of
And everybody calls, because no one's folding to a min raise in this configuration, right. I think. So this is an exciting pot sweetener bet, and we're going to get to the flop 5-handed. I guess someone's thinking about it. That is, who is that there? That's Deacon, who calls fine. Albini and Berck both call, and we're to the flop, ace high flop, which I think I don't want to. I won't give away anybody's hands. Let's just think about it. Can you? I think this is obvious, but can you think of a hand that TaxMan should be min raising like that?
No. Should? No. Possibly they would be doing it with something like aces, but that's not the same as they should do it with.
All right, but so now you play a lot of similar kinds of games. What do you put him on? Can you range someone who does that, or is it just no idea?
Believe it, it's been a while since I played in a game like this, where like I do see a lot of limping, but I don't see that little min raise over the limps like I used to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard for me to range this play or range anybody honestly in this spot.
All right. Well, we're not going to know because he checks, Maria checks, Deacon Blues checks. Albini's going to stab with his little knife. For again a third pot, I think it might be slightly more. Maybe that's 40% or something. Everybody folds except for Deacon. Deacon's going to call.
Okay.
Turn is a jack of hearts. It's going to go check.
No wonder I saw you, Jam.
Now we're going to get to the river. Brings in any kings a straight here. No flush
That's
made
all
it.
I do these days.
Deacon checks. Albini bets 666, which is what is that? A little bit more than half pot, and Deacon Blues calls. What do you expect to see from Albini? Remember, he bet the flop and then checked that turn, which is interesting.
I'm gonna say something like a king, jack, king, queen, possibly king 10, queen. What queens can we have?
I mean,
Um,
Queen Jack is two
imagine
pair on
king,
the
queen.
turn. Even King Queen on the turn, I don't know, has that much reason. I guess the King Queen would check for fear that Deacon Blues has a bad ace and isn't going to fold it.
Right, because Deacon Blues started this whole thing by limping under the gun.
Yeah,
And players who do that do tend to have a lot of weak aces in their
suited
range.
aces or even unsuited. Okay.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So here are the hands. Queen 6 off, Jack 10 off. And Jack 10 value bet the river and got called by a Berck Queen.
Yeah, that's ambitious. Because, well, unless you put Deacon Blues on a lot of one pair ace X hands, if that's the case, then I like the river bet. That hand just shouldn't call a river bet. Like, really, her most likely calling hand, or I don't know why I'm saying
Deacon
that.
Blues is a bet. Yeah.
Deacon Blues most likely river calling hand should be two pair. And Steve's his two pair isn't like, it's kind of like one of the weaker two pairs.
It beats
So I
two
don't know
combinations of two pair, Jack 9 and 10 9 only. And
so if your value target is two pair and you have one of the weaker two pairs, then you probably shouldn't bet. So it seems like the value target is the weaker top pairs. And a lot of players will make the mistake of calling too often with those hands in 6-way pots.
yeah.
So I think this is probably a good exploitive bet by Steve.
Yeah, he got,
especially if he knows Deacon Blues can have stuff like Queen 6 offsuit in this spot.
I don't know if he knows that precisely, but he got his value here in a spot where I just don't think I would have gone for it against almost anybody. So, and that is, I mean, that is the brand of Steve Albini, is he'll go for thin value in a lot of places other people might not. So it definitely worked there. It was a nice play.
That's a good trait to have for sure.
Yeah. He got it done. All right, here's a no. We're going to be on hand 53 on the right-hand side here. And we're going to see Jam races to 300, which is 2.5, I think. No, 2.5 would... No, it is 2.5. Okay. Berck folds, right. Maria calls, Albini calls, so we're going to be three-handed to the flop. There's antes in play here now as well, as you can see, so Steve can be...
Oh, you know what? I just assumed there were antes the whole time. So
there probably were. I go back and check. Okay. There probably were. I don't remember, but the early parts of the tournament, there are no antes, and so I don't remember the last hand. But there definitely are now, and they're the antes add up to one big blind for what that's worth.
Gotcha.
Okay, so here Jam is the original raiser. He gets called two spots, and this is a board that for the under the gun raiser. Are you betting this with a very high frequency?
Multi-way pots, I'm going to say I'm going to bet it less often than I would otherwise, especially being out of position to one of the players.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, no, honestly, I think this should be a check a lot here. Maybe like 50-50.
Okay. It's a mix. He's going to bet. He's going to bet 1/3 pot. Maria's going to raise to 1080, so it's, I don't know what that is, 2/3 pot maybe? Something like that. Albini's going to cold call. That cold call is ominous, I think.
Yeah, it needs to be a 7 or a flush draw. That's about it.
And now Jam is going to think and think and think and think and fold. So I'm going to pause as soon as he folds. Okay. What's the best hand you would fold as Jam?
Probably something like jacks or queens.
So if
honestly,
you,
honestly, I could even fold aces or kings here against the right opponents, especially if I have the ace of spades in my hand. So that means they have fewer bluffs in this spot. But yeah, I'm thinking jacks or queens I would let go.
okay. And you'd have a hard decision with aces or kings. And you'd be more likely, well, you're saying you'd be more likely to fold with a big spade in your hand?
Yes, because although we have the backdoor flush draw, which is okay, I'd rather them have the flush draw. Um, like if I'm gonna get in with aces on this board, a big portion of their raising range are gonna be ace x spades.
Yeah.
So I'd rather them have that, because if they don't have that, then what do they have? And now it's starting to look like their range is more trips and boats.
I'll observe, and this may be wrong because you said it's a 50-50 mix, but this is why I don't like betting over pairs into two opponents on a flop like this, because they have so many hands that they can. There's so many combos. There's probably 30 to 40 flush draws available. 8-6 is a hand they might play. 6-4 is a hand they might play, and even 9-8 can bluff here.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is that their range should probably bet like 50% of the time. And I'm just guessing at that number.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that over pairs should bet 50% of the time.
Okay.
I think over pairs work really well, especially aces. Works really well as a check call here.
Okay. Because
see
if he leads...
See a clean turn card?
Right.
Yeah.
If Jam checks, he doesn't get raised off his equity, let alone his bet. So, exactly. I mean, I guess that's hindsight, because what if he bets and takes it down? Then it was a great bet, right? In this case, he folds kings with the king of spades, which is actually not a fold I really expect people to make in this kind of a game, practically ever.
See, that's an interesting hand, because I'd much rather continue with kings than with the king of spades,
right,
than aces with the ace of spades.
Right.
Because... should I explain why?
I know why.
I know you know.
Because,
I know you know.
Because the ace of spades is blocking half
listeners.
of their flush draws, and you want them to have a flush draw, really. Right?
Right. Like they are very likely to have stuff like ace 5 of spades. Well, ace 4 spades. But they're not likely to have king 4 spades. So blocking that doesn't really help you as much. So
Albini's gonna lead for a shove that's just over pot. Maria's going to think about it quite a while and fold. Do you want results?
So Albini has well, I know what Albini has.
What does Albini have?
Either a boat or trips. That's what they should have. And Maria. See, Maria's the short stack here before the flop. So she had like 40 bigs. She can't be calling too loose there. I wanted to put her on boats a lot, like with pocket fives or quads, but because it's hard for her to call with weaker like.
Remember, she raised the flop. The flop action was jam. The original raiser bet 360 into whatever. That was like a third pot into maybe 1,000.
Right.
And Maria raised.
So maybe she just flatted like jacks. Maybe she flatted like jacks and decided to raise that.
Yeah, which is interesting too. I mean, I don't, in her spot, I don't know that I like to raise a 7. I like to raise a flush draw that I'm willing to go to the felt with. Like
I wouldn't
nut
raise
flush
jacks
draw or some combo draw or something.
Right.
But why do I want to raise a middle pair? Isn't that a game theory disaster?
Probably more so in the multi-way pot than a heads-up pot, and also probably more so versus under the gun opener. But there's definitely times where you want to do that.
Okay.
But I'm not well versed on when
All
that's the case. But this doesn't seem to be the spot to do that.
It's interesting. I mean, Maria, they're both excellent players, so I'm more inclined to try to find the reason why they do what they do as opposed to disagree with it. But it turns out Maria here had pocket eights, no spade, and Steve Albini had a nut flush draw. Which, by the way, he had a deuce, so I guess he picked up 2 outs on the turn with. He's got ace deuce of spades, and he gets the fold. So congratulations, Steve Albini.
Right. What do we have here? We had a bet, raise, and then cold call.
Yeah.
Ace deuce probably should just jam at that point instead of cold calling. Pocket ace. Why would pocket ace raise here? Yeah, I'm unsure about that. I guess
it's results oriented. It was brilliant because she got kings to fold and she got ace deuce to call, and if she calls
I don't think she got kings to fold. I think Steve got kings to fold.
Well, true, that's true. Yeah, although who's to say if Steve had just folded, I don't know what kings would have done. I don't know. It's a really tough one too, right? Because it's true that when Steve cold calls like that, it makes it really hard to continue with your overpair. Whereas against one opponent, maybe he just goes, LOL, let's get it in.
Yeah, I'm almost happy in that spot as jam when I have an overpair and it goes raise call. Now my decision is easy. I'm like happily folding at that point. Well, before I was going to be faced with kind of a tough decision.
Cool, yeah. I think, let me see what the next one is. I believe it's
Dan, you might want to write this hand.
140. It's coming up here.
Yeah.
The one that just was 15. Okay, on the left-hand side, we're going to see SOB, Subfuscatory, raises to 800 with Jack 10 suited and gets called by Sixter. Now, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-handed, I think, and we're not near the bubble. There's plenty of people left. It looks like we're pretty deep. There's not that deep. What is that, 25 bigs?
25 bigs, yes.
Something like that. Okay. So let's start with the pre-flop. Are you okay with the hijack, min raising, Jack 10 suited?
Definitely, 100%.
Okay. On this flop, what should Jack 10 of clubs do here? With, very dry flop, favors the pre-flop raiser, backdoor club draw, sort of a backdoor gut shot. Not a very good one.
For sure, should be betting somewhere around quarter to third pot, somewhere in that range.
Okay. Sixer's going to check, which he should probably do with most of his range.
Yes.
And Subfuscatory bets 683, which is probably exactly 1/3 pot. Sixter calls. Okay. Going to a turn.
Perfect so far.
Ace of spades. Sixer's going to check again. What should Subfuscatory do?
Okay, so if I can't say that. SOB.
Yeah.
if SOB wants to play theoretical here, what they should do is bet big because they have a massive range advantage here. One thing to keep in mind is that this hand started with 25 bigs.
Mm-hmm.
So Sixter should be 3-betting with a lot of their ace-x hands.
Mm-hmm.
So when stacks are shallow, the big blind defender should have fewer ace-x than normal.
And when the second ace comes, and there's a front door flush draw, maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. it makes it kind of hard to fire that second bullet big, because with an ace, why would you bet so big anyway? Why not just bet like half pot, or would you really go pot
Yeah,
with your ace if you had it?
so that's why I say it's a question if you want to tackle this hand from a theoretical
Yeah.
perspective or
Yeah.
from an exploitive perspective.
Mhm.
In theory, you have the polarized range, so you're going to go big with your value and tons of bluffs, like this one, for example.
Mhm.
So you're right. If you want to like try to play more exploitative, I do agree that the big bet doesn't make as much sense, because one thing that you have to rely on is your opponent being able to make some pretty big folds, and a lot of players just aren't capable of like folding a weak ace here, for example.
Right.
So if he has, yeah.
Well, either
So I
way,
think this is probably a good adjustment in a softer game.
so Fuscahora checks back the turn, and now faces a half pot bet from Sixter, who just leads out on the river. The river pairs the 6, so maybe his theory is maybe he has more 6s. Although, I mean, his name is Sixter, so maybe he has a lot of 6s. But I don't know if that's the explanation, or maybe just because Obfuscatory check back the turn, he's just going to bet everything. I'm not totally sure, but what would your interpretation of that bet be? Would you ever do anything but fold as Obfuscatory?
No, I would fold every time. I would interpret this as an ace, a 6, or a flush draw. And I think most players are more likely to do this with an ace or a 6 than a flush draw. And if they have a 6 and we jam, they're definitely not folding.
Oh, no, they're not fold. I wouldn't expect them to fold. Although that raises an interesting point, which is if you do have an ace, checking back the turn is maybe not so terrible.
Yeah, if you're up against a player that you expect to lead river a lot, then I can see that being a good exploit.
So the Jack 10 does fold, and it turns out that Sixter had Queen of Diamonds, 5 of Diamonds, so flush draw on the flop that he did not raise. And then, I mean, just remember on this run out, the only thing that really beats him is a king. So if he's bluffing here, and I got to assume he's bluffing with Queen 5, he's only folding out a king, and a king might not fold. I don't think I would fold a king here, actually. Say we had King 10 instead of Jack 10. Would you fold to that bet?
If I had King 10 instead of Jack 10, that is a good question. I would lean towards calling the non-diamond ones, because I want him to have those busted draws in his range. Yeah, I think I would call King 10 without a diamond.
I mean, the problem is, like, if the other guy has a king of diamonds, you're chopping anyway. So I take your point as you do want him to have a diamond draw, and that contains a fair amount of them. In any event, so it turns out he was bluffing with the best hand is the point. This is another one where I'm not totally sure what the bluffing range for Sixter should be here, and Queen 5 is not so weak a hand, really.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. What should be his river bluffing range?
And let's agree, if he has 5-4 of diamonds, by the way, on the flop, that was a gut shot and a flush draw with no showdown value. Probably should raise that. So, 10-9 of diamonds, 9-8 of diamonds, 8-7 of diamonds. Those are hands that go ahead and bluff because they're garbage and they're showdown value. And that's how you got to the river with them. But honestly, all he did was check call the flop, so he has millions of hands.
Right.
In fact, maybe he shouldn't be bluffing the diamond draws because those block some of the folding range.
True. But do you ever check back with diamonds after betting flop? I don't think you have diamonds very often here.
Okay.
Or SOB. What's Sixter's stack behind? Is this like half his stack he's betting?
He covered. He had about 10,000 before the hand, I think.
Gotcha.
No, he had
gotcha.
11,000. So he covered by a fair
similar
amount.
stack sizes. Gotcha. Yeah.
A couple thousand more.
Right. Okay.
Well, mysterious. On to hand number 7. That's going to get folded, I don't think, with much delay. I hope. Thank you. All right. Okay, now we're at the final table. Notice the final table blue. We're very proud of that at the Continental 3 Poker Club. In this hand, Sundog Millie, I think, is going to raise to 2222, which is 2.2 big blinds. Skinner in the small blind is going to cold call. That's interesting in and of itself.
Yes.
Skinner, let's play a Skinner here. Skinner is holding 8 of spades, 7 of clubs. Would that be in your cold calling range from the small blind and a 5-handed? By the way, I think we're on the bubble here.
Definitely not.
3 or 4
That
hands.
is
I can't remember if it's 3
100%.
cash or maybe it's 3 cash. I don't recall, but that's a little bit of a loose call.
For sure.
But on the bright side, she flops an open-ended straight draw and a kind of weak backdoor club draw. She's got the 7 of clubs. So that's a nice flop. It's also no card above a 10. That I might be tempted to lead into this. What do you think?
I think people generally see bet too much, so I'm gonna check jam.
I would agree.
Skinner leads for half pot, and Sonny immediately calls. Sundog Millie immediately calls. Which is, I mean, do you? By the way, if you're Skinner and you just led and got snap called, do you read anything into that timing? Does it mean anything?
Generally, from what I've heard, that means a medium strength hand because they didn't need time to think if they wanted to raise or not, or if they wanted to fold. So that's what I've heard, but I don't utilize those type of tails as often as I should.
Well, so the turn is the 3 of hearts. And we should ask you, Skinner, remember, still has 8-7. The club is no good. But she has 8-7 with the 7 of clubs. She led the flop. What should she do on this turn?
If I misclick and called this hand pre and misclick and led this flop, at this point, I would be looking to this is super exploitative. The only reason I would ever do this if I wanted to try to rep clubs. So I would consider a small size here that if I get called again and the club comes, I can jam river as a bluff. Now that is not, GTO at all. We're like way out of GTO realm in this hand from the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's the way I would try to creatively dig myself out of this hole.
What? Well, and I mean, if you throw this at PO Solver, it doesn't even know how it got here. It just says, okay, there's 12,000 in the pot. I got 22,000 behind. Actually, it's 18 effective, and I have 8-7 off. No flush draw.
Yeah, that's the problem with analyzing these sort of hands. It's like so many of these hands start off in a way that a solver would never start off with.
Right.
And so the solver just kind of scratches his head like a human does, like halfway through the hand.
Yeah.
So we're just all left guessing.
All right, so we're in the fog of war here. Skinner's going to lead for just under half pot, like 40% pot. She's going to bet 5,000.
I think she's like 20 or
Google Chrome is annoying. I think it's take her a little bit of time to do it. Sonny's going to jam all in. And when he does, now this is interesting. I mean, the pot odds on the call here are huge. You can see that the total pot is 35,000, and she's got 13,000 to call. So she's actually getting almost 3-1. Still a fold.
This is a
though.
fold.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a fold. One thing that we need to understand is that when we're on the stone bubble, there's something called ICM tax. That means you need way better odds than you normally would to make a break-even call.
Yeah.
When you're on the bubble here. So I would say I'm throwing a number out. She probably needs something like 35% equity or something to call here with the ICM tax.
I don't think we're on the stone bubble, but even if we're one off, there's still some ICM. She's gonna fold it.
Exactly.
Good fold.
Yes.
You want to guess what Sonny had? I'll give you results.
Yeah, no idea. Ranges are too wide.
He had 5-4, so he actually turned his gutter.
Gotcha.
But I'm also remember we talked about it was a quick call on the flop. He called fast with just 5-4 for a gutter, so he had to have been playing to bluff. And he caught a 4-outer. And
I feel like, a lot of players call fast with that spot because they're drawing. It's like the decision is easy. When you're drawing, you click the call button.
I know, but he's a very, very experienced player. My bigger point is this. For him to call there at all, because you could argue he should just dump it. It's nothing but a gutter. It has no backdoor flush draw. Even if he hits a 5 or a 4, it might not be good.
It's weird, man. Is it 5-4 suited?
Yeah, 5-4 of spades.
Gotcha. It's weird in terms of I know solvers don't really like to fold gutters that easily.
Yeah.
What size is the flop bet? I think it wasn't 40, like a big bet.
40% pot, I think.
I'd be surprised if a solver folded there, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. As you say though, for these, we're not starting that deep, so even when you hit your gutter, you don't really have great implied odds usually.
Exactly.
Tough.
Yeah, solver might raise with their hand. I don't think they're gonna call, but I think they might raise, or I guess it's probably a mix between raising or folding.
So that's the end. I'm gonna have to change to the other file here. Give me 1 sec. Sorry about that. That looks fairly strange. Okay, here we go. And now we're on to the next hand. We've only got a few left. Should be hand 48 on the left there. And the chat is often really funny. You see it? EvilWillie is complaining about people raising his big blind, which I love. It's fabulous. All right, so in this hand, we might as well play as Subfuscatory, who's the initial raiser to 155. It's 30-60 with an ante of 5. So that's like a 2.5x pot. Actually, yeah, just about that. Destructo calls, and we're heads up to the flop. The flop is 10-8, 5-2 clubs. We got the king of clubs. What do you want to do as the pre-flop aggressor here, getting called by the button? We're reasonably deep. SPR is like 7 or something.
Right. So this is a spot where you should be checking a lot, and your betting range should be polarized. But you have a pretty good hand to start polarizing with because you have multiple draws to strong hands. Obviously, you would love to have the ace of clubs, but the king of club is pretty good here, especially when you have king, queen, and there's a 10 on the board. Mm-hmm. So you got some outs to the nut straight, you got some outs to the second nut flush, and you have 2 overcards. So this is one of the few hands that I think you do want to be betting in this situation.
You're not going to see that. You're going to see a check call. Destructo bets 283, which is 66% pot probably. Can you countenance a call here, or is this just a check fold once, or check raise even?
I think you should be more likely to raise than call, but you could definitely. What was the bet size?
66%. It was probably 2/3 pot. 2/3 pot.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm probably going to check raise a decent percentage of the time, because I do want to start polarizing with this hand for sure.
Well, as played, it was a check call, and ace diamonds comes on the turn. What are you doing as subfuscatory?
Checking at this point.
Why?
Because we've basically given up the betting lead, and for them to bet here, they're now basically playing the polarized range, and we have to basically play the bluff catching range,
Well,
or
the
we can
ace
turn our hand into a bluff.
should be said though that SOB was the pre-flop raiser and the ace. When he check calls like that, there's a lot of hands with an ace in them that improved here in the check call range. So like ace king, ace queen, it's not so bad to check call there. It could still be the best hand. And then you could have some, I don't know if really there's very many ace X of clubs that would have check called. Seems like that's probably a hand that's going to bet or check raise. So that may not. In other words,
that seems reasonable.
Well, as played, subfuscatory led for 544, which is again 60% pot-ish, and gets a really quick fold from Queen 10.
See, yeah, quick fold means that they probably expect you to play those big aces like this.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good way to use that read that they have on you to your advantage by taking the line you did.
Next hand is
Gotcha.
I'll get it in post. All right. Hand 105 on the left. All right, this is a hand I do know about.
Okay.
Here on the left-hand side, we've got some folds. Silver raises to 600, and Destructo raises to 1,000, and silver calls. Here's another situation. Now, let's look at the stacks a little bit. Yeah, the blinds are 100
50 and
200. So it was a 3-bet to 1,000 over a 3x bet to 600. Destructo does make small re-raises. You remember, I think he... did he do that before? I thought he did. Maybe
I can't remember. I remember somebody doing it.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think it was TaxMan, actually. But anyway, is there any argument for such a small 3-bet here?
No.
All right, so we'll see what happens.
Not out. I mean, it's like really bad from out of position.
Yeah.
Especially in a heads-up pot. The only time you really should use small 3-bets is when you are 3-betting from like middle position against a guy who's opening so many hands that you want to 3-bet him like very often.
Converge range.
Right. And you kind of benefit from folding out people behind. But in a heads-up pot from out of position, yeah, there's no reason for that.
This is cool then. I mean, it's 5-4 deuce, 2 suits. Destructo then checks the flop and silver checks back. The turn brings a 10, an offsuit 10, pretty blank. And Destructo's going to check again. Silver's going to bet 1,000, which is less than half pot. Call it 40% or something. And Destructo makes a small raise to 2,800. So, sorry, I got ahead of him. But Silverman's going to put his bet out there. Destructo's going to raise to 2,800, which is not close to a pot size bet. Pot size would be 5,250 or something. So he's like a half pot raise. And Silverman's going to find the fold. What do you think of what would you put Destructo on, assuming you played? And by the way that Silverman played it seems very reasonable. He's not going to fold to such a small 3-bet, and whatever he decided to bet the turn with here, he bets nice and small. It seems reasonable. Now he gets check raised by Destructo. What do you think of Destructo's hand?
I have no idea. Like these type of plays, I can't make reads like when they do things that are like so unorthodox. It's hard to pin them down to a hand unless you've played with them for a while. I think if I played with this guy over, a decent number of hands, I'll have a very good idea of what he's doing this with. But without the information, this could be anything from aces to 5-4 or
Yeah.
who knows, 9-8 of spades. I just have no idea.
Well, results are Destructo had aces, and Silver had 6-4 suited, so he made middle pair on the flop. I don't blame him for betting that turn. When he gets 2 checks from Destructo, it sort of feels like he's king, and he might as well. The problem is that he might check raise that too. So maybe he should just check back the turn and try to get a showdown.
Yeah, if he's going to make a protection bet, it should be a little bit smaller than this, more like third pot or quarter pot. But I don't hate the idea of a protection bet against those sort of hands. But here's the thing. Are you even really getting protection from a hand like ace king? Because they're not folding
Right.
for any bet size because it's 2 overs and a gutter. So I agree that maybe this should just be a check bet on the turn.
Well, you have the last word, Carlos. Thank you so much for your wise analysis. It's a pleasure. On behalf of the members of the Continental Free Poker Club, I thank you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to do this with you, Dan.